Paul Falcone. Is that the right way to say it? Welcome to
That
my
is
couch.
perfect. Thank you very much, Angie. I'm happy to be here.
So, in German we say Falcone.
Falcone,
Yeah.
genau.
And I know you speak German and you have to tell us a bit more about that. So, what is the fun story behind your German skills?
There's a fun story. I got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree from UCLA in German, in Germanistik. And
Amazing.
I loved it. I didn't continue on for the PhD studies. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go for the Doktorarbeit, but
Yeah.
but I had enough there that, I had studied at the University of Regensburg, and I spent time in Nuremberg with a guest family when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful experience for me and a great way to get through college.
Wow. I'm very impressed because you don't even have German heritage, if I understand it correctly.
This is true. Yes, I'm an
Yeah.
Italian American.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. And the name sort of indicates that. So, but yeah, I was really surprised and positively surprised to be able to have a chat with you in German. Very
Yeah,
good,
it's my
very
pleasure,
good.
of course.
And I guess you're a word person, a language person, and that's also why you became a writer. So it makes perfect sense. But I guess you weren't a writer and Amazon best-selling author from the beginning. I also know you had a long career in HR. So,
Yes,
do you want to tell us a bit more about why you do what you do today, and then also your journey of how you got there?
of course. So it's interesting. Angie, I'm a little different than most people. I studied German, um, didn't know what I was going to do when I got out of college. So I went to a recruiting firm locally in Los Angeles,
Uh-huh.
and I said, "Could you help me find a job?" And they said, "Sure, why don't you come work here with us?" And I said, "Okay, what do you do?" And they said, "Well, there's the telephone and there's
Uh-huh.
the yellow pages to make the phone calls, and it's an outbound sales type of thing." Well, it turns out I was good at it. And I stayed there for about 6 years, and they made me their director of sales training, which put me in the HR space.
Yeah.
But still, I was doing it for a recruiting firm, so it wasn't really HR. I'd gone to UCLA, back to UCLA at this point,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
did a 2-year certification program in HR management, and eventually I was able to find a job in HR. I ended up doing that for about 3 decades, was head of HR for Nickelodeon Animation, um, head of international HR for Paramount Pictures, and I'd also worked in healthcare and biotech. And so realistically, for 3 decades, I worked for good companies. I was very fortunate, I had a great career. But in 2022, we were just coming out of COVID, and I was the head of human resources for something known as the Motion Picture and Television Fund, which is the retirement home for the people in the entertainment industry, the actors, the actresses,
Oh,
the
okay.
production people.
Yeah.
Going through COVID was tough, Angie, especially in a retirement home. And after we were coming out of the cloud of COVID, I decided I want to launch my own consulting firm.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
HarperCollins, my publisher, came out with a 5-book series. They called it the Paul Falcone Workplace Leadership Series. I was really honored that they used my name in the title. And that was it. I did not look back. So these days I do management training, I do keynote speaking, and I do executive coaching. And it's kept me very busy over the last 3 years. I've been very, very pleased with the move. So
Oh,
that
wonderful.
that takes you to today. That's me right now.
Wonderful. And Paul, I thought because I have an HR colleague and expert on the couch today, I want to ask you some fun stuff.
Fun stuff. I'm ready.
Fun stuff about the trend, the mega trend we're all talking about, um, AI. And I just attended an event, and it was all about AI adoption, agentic AI, how we can use AI within organizations. And I wanted to hear your view on, where the we don't even call it HR anymore. It's now called people and culture. Where is the function heading strategically in times of AI?
Boy, there's a book in there, Angie. That's a great question. You know what? So many people are adopting it, but at different levels and
Yeah,
in different ways.
yeah,
And so the reality is that the first thing I would say is we can't get lost in the technology. Leadership is through the heart. It's all about relationship building. So there's, the expression, there's an app for that. There seems to be an app for everything these days. There's not an app that's ever going to replace strong leadership because that's an emotional connection that you have to your employees. So I tell people, first off, when it comes to AI, don't get too lost in this stuff.
Yeah,
It can't do everything. But to the second point, I would say is it is making our lives a lot easier if we know how to use it and practicing and refining what we're doing in terms of the prompts. Um, I was talking to someone just the other day who said, Paul, I needed to build out HR. And what I could do in 30 minutes using AI would have taken me and my team 3 months to do had we not had the AI. And I said, well, tell me about it. And she said, well, first of all, I wanted to upgrade my job descriptions. So I, for example, took a title that was common here in our company and I said, create a job description for a company in this field, this industry, this size of company, blah, 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 blah. Put in all these details. And she said, I got a beautiful job description. I didn't even have to edit it that much. I edited it some. But then I said, build an onboarding program for this person over the first 90 days. And it gave me all these ideas. Then she said, I entered in, build a performance appraisal template so that I know how to evaluate this person at the 1 year mark. And the funny thing is, she said it's built so well, and you could put emotion into it. You can say, for a company that is looking for an empathetic, relationship-driven type of business environment with a culture of caring, you put that in, and it's funny, but it changes the texture of the wording. It changes the feel. It can soften it.
yeah,
And she said, the bottom line is I did that for one job and I built this whole thing all the way through. And then I did it for a second job. And then I did it for a third job. And she said, before you know it, I had a binder full of material. Now we had to vet it. She said, I did it in human resources. Then I sent it to my VP of legal so that they could vet it and everything. Then I sent it to the operational line managers. But everyone basically said, this is great stuff. And she said, I was able to do this stuff in a morning and get so much of this stuff done. And what I realized was, wow, this is going to send our function through the roof in terms of what our capabilities are. She said, but truth me, it makes me worry about, am I going to have a job? And I said, yeah, that's the same thing as an author. I've written now 17 books, Angie, as you know. And I sit back and I think, well, wait a second. I can go to ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini and just say, what would author Paul Falcone say about effective leadership for new managers? And boom, it all comes out. And I'm like, wow, that's exactly what I would say. So it's a little uncanny. It's a little scary. We're still playing with it. We're still getting a feel for it. We are definitely in a nascent stage. We're at a very early stage. But the capability for the efficiency that it creates and the intuitiveness that it creates is remarkable. And it can help us very much.
exactly. And hopefully it will take some of the admin and, base level work out and help us to have free our time to serve our clients better. Yeah, whether
Correct.
that's coaching clients or whether that's clients within the HR space, because I think, that is something, at least for me in global mobility, I always found, yeah, it was a bit of a shame, like I love to spend time with people. I came into the function so that I can spend time with people, not to enter data into a system or, to write job descriptions or testimonials and these kind of things. But at some level, these things are required. So, yeah, so I mean, there's also this hope that it will free the time for the really human part of the job, where, as you said, you can't replace empathy, you can't replace connection, vibes, or whatever you want to call it, or, the feeling of being in a community and belonging to like a social group. I think for that we will still need human beings. Yeah, and we're not just our job either. Mm. So,
Angie, you hit the nail on the head. It really where HR's real value add is going forward. They talk about data analytics and metrics, and I think that's important. Understanding the human capital muscle, the people
yeah,
muscle, what
yeah,
is it? That's important. But I really think, honestly, it's going to free up, excuse me, HR people to become better coaches, to spend time with their frontline operational leaders and make them better leaders. That's the real value add. If you really think about it, you can put automation in place to develop all kinds of things. But the most important thing is talent development. Even talent acquisition
Mhm.
is going, I don't want to say it's going away. It'll always be there, but it's going to morph. It's going to move towards
Mhm.
talent development because talent scarcity is a reality for the rest of the century in all the industrialized countries. There's not enough people to do the work. You're not just going to be able to run an ad on LinkedIn, and the fish jump in the boat. That's not going to be. You have to know how to grow your own talent. And you have to be able to look forward and say, where are the talent gaps? Or who's retiring? Because in the next 5 years, the baby boom is totally gone. By 2029, they'll be out of the workplace. Where are those problems in senior leadership? And how do we build over the next 5 years a talent bridge that gets us to replace those key jobs, assuming we won't be able to find them on the outside market? That's the kind of thinking that HR needs to go through now. So it's interesting. AI will help, but AI will only, to your point, I think, at least initially, move us in a direction where administratively it frees us up. It creates documentation and things that otherwise take time, but it does free us up to build people leadership muscle. It's building that muscle that's really the key advantage that I think HR offers.
Mm. And I also think we still will have the human to human networks, informal, formal, in organizations, outside of organizations. And I think they will become even more critical than they are today already. Because despite technology, for example, what we see in the job market right now, there's a mismatch. Despite all the technology we have, there is this problem of employers not being able to fill positions, and then there's the sea of unemployed people looking for work. For example, Gen X people who are highly qualified, very experienced, and would love to have a job because they can't go into retirement yet, but still have a hard time to be matched to appropriate positions. So I think we also will still continue to need the human to human networks, even if we have technologically advanced job markets inside organizations, which is something we dreamed of 20 years ago. Um, Now, Paul, you're also, let me say this right, the UCLA an adjunct instructor. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, yes, that's
At the
right.
UCLA Extension School of Business and Management. It's a mouthful. So I would call it a lecturer.
Lecture is good.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit, better, different. But so you completely understand probably, what I need for my next question from you is when you think about HR, people and culture professional recruiters, global mobility managers, all the people that we teach in global mobility education, and you think about these mega trends that we're confronted with, and the world that we live in, what do you think we should add to our curricula in these fields?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I've been teaching at UCLA now for on and off for 20 years, and there are 9 courses that are in the certificate program, and the certificate program takes about 2 years on average, Angie, for people to
Yeah.
get. We look at the critical areas, but we constantly keep coming back to what else do we need to upgrade? What is the newest thing? So much has changed since COVID.
Yeah.
And we have so many new factors that go into play post-COVID, including remote work and managing remote teams and building relationships with people who are out of sight that you don't know them that well.
Mm-mm.
My son had gotten a job in Chicago with a large consulting firm that was based out of Boston. He got it in 2022. It was a satellite job. It was intended to be in Chicago,
Mhm.
but he did not meet his boss in person for over a year
Mhm. Mhm.
because there was no travel back then
Yeah.
because of COVID. The problem, the challenge with the return to work element that CEOs and business owners want to bring their people back to work. People don't want to come back to work 5 days a week. There's a
Mhm.
lot of tension. And the idea too is that we're in a post-COVID reintegration phase. I mean, when you think about it, if COVID ended around 2022, 2023, you need 5 years. Figure 2026, 27, 28, somewhere in there before we get through this. We're still going to see talent scarcity.
Yeah.
We are still going to see inflationary trends. supply chain blockages. We're still working this stuff out. And the bottom line is, it's like, how do you change your curriculum to think about these things? So, quick answer. I'm giving a long answer to a short question, but stay with me for a minute, Angie. If you look at what CEOs want, and you can do a quick Google search on CEO priorities,
Yeah.
there's numerous studies out there.
Yeah.
They want emotional intelligence, the ability to bond. They want collaboration. That's one thing. They want innovation and creativity, which means you have to have a safe workplace where people can take risk.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're afraid of making a mistake, they're not going to be creative at all. There's
Mm-hmm.
no innovation that comes out of fear. Innovation is
Yeah.
only going to come out of trusting relationships where you feel like your boss supports you. They are looking for agility and flexibility, which would make sense because everything is changing so quickly. Now, we've moved beyond the COVID core issues, but now we find ourselves, now it's 2025, we got a whole bunch of new issues that we're facing with. And it's this ability, it's this almost becoming, excuse me, what I call an adrenaline junkie. The adrenaline is it makes your energy go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're building the plane while we're flying it. We are rushing, we are scattered, we are exhausted, we are burned out.
Mm-hmm.
These are real key factors that have to be built into these things. So you talk about global mobility experts, and it's like their ability to read people, to understand not just the individual executive, but the family, the spouse, has to go deeper than it's been in the past. I hate to say this because in human resources, we've done it too, but recruiting was kind of a checkbox.
Mm-hmm.
Does the person come from the right industry? Did it come or she come from a good company? Do they have the right title? Do they have the right softwares? Check, 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 check. We hire them.
Yeah.
It's going to have to become more personal. You're going to have, as a recruiter, spend time getting to know that person. I'm not talking a lot of time, but an extra 5 minutes on the front end of an interview before you begin your interview questions, because the relationship isn't ready for that yet. Don't start with tell me your greatest strength and tell me your greatest weakness and give me an example of a time when it's not there yet. Spend time with the person, getting to know what's important to them and asking them questions like, what brings you here today?
Mm-hmm.
And why would making a change in your career path right now make sense for you in terms of building your resume over the long term?
Mm-hmm.
And if you could choose two or three reasons, what are the key drivers? What are the key elements that would make you say yes to another offer? What's important to you at this point in your career? Where are you in terms of your career and professional development? How do you think we might be able to help you with that? And even a question like, Angie, tell me what still makes you smile about what you're doing in your field. That makes people smile, just answering the question. But you've got to build a trusting relationship and you've got to look deeper. Because if people feel guarded, if they feel like it's a formal Q&A, question and answer, they will only let you in so far. When you
Absolutely.
pierce their heart, you
Yeah.
get to know them. You spend time getting to know them before you worry about what's going on in our company and what our needs are, even if it's only 5 questions
Yeah.
that last 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Put that on the front end of your conversations, and you will get people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable. And I mean vulnerable in a healthy sense.
Yeah.
They might say, Angie, I normally don't say this in an interview, but, and now they're telling you things that they wouldn't tell other employers. You can establish that level of trust in the first 5 minutes, but it all depends on the questions you're asking and the idea of can you come across as someone who really cares about other people? But that's critical. It really is.
It's almost like they need coaching skills.
They need coaching skills to interview, correct. And
Yeah.
my point too is the professional development, career development paradigm, move it to the front end before they're even employed. If you can show people that you're interested in them and their career development and why joining our company might make sense to them, they're going to walk away with an impression that says this company really cares about people and professional development.
Mm-hmm.
If they're asking me these questions before they even hired me,
Mm-hmm.
wow, they must really be interested in that. And when I get hired, I'm hoping that I'll be in a situation where they'll care about me, not just what I could do for them.
So what I'm hearing from you, Paul, and contradicts a little bit the impression I got. So I'm relieved that I'm not the only person who thinks like that. It contradicts a bit the impression I got from the conference I went to. Is that I think we need to become even more human centric in the work that we do. Because the impression I got at the recent event was well, with the technology that is coming and skills-based organization, you're basically going to be like a robot. You deliver, you do your skill, you bring your skill to the table, and that's why we hire you, or, alternatively, we can automate or hire AI or whatever. And I think the really good organizations in the future will be the ones who manage to fill the void that people are currently experiencing with regards to belonging, with regards to, being seen as a person, exactly what you're saying, and who manage sort of, to be that glue, that magnet, something very strong that pulls people to staying with the organization. I mean, we could call it purpose, we could call it, but we could call it like spirit, we could call it like good vibes. Um, and and I don't think we can solve that with the old patterns that we used in the last 40 years in human resources, like, with the 1980 approach to HR. So honestly, I think we need to break down the silos completely.
Angie, I agree with you 100%, 110%.
Yeah.
Because here's a scoop. When you look at these surveys of CEO priorities, emotional intelligence is at the top of the list.
Hmm.
The funny thing is, when I was growing up in human resources, they called it soft skills.
Yeah.
Soft skills is a term people just laughed. Soft skills. I don't need soft skills. What are
It's
soft?
that
That's
it's
an
soft
HR
skills.
thing. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now they call it emotional intelligence, and it's one of the top five things that CEOs want. What's changed? COVID. Because the idea of COVID was employees now for the first time had to work remotely. They were not even allowed into the office. And there was this idea of what was coined as productivity paranoia, that CEOs couldn't see their employees for the first time. All of them. There was no one there. And they got nervous about it. And all of a sudden they realized, if you remember during the great resignation and all these different terms they came up with, people were leaving and no one was applying for jobs. Companies were sitting back, whether a Fortune 500 company or a local restaurant. The local restaurants couldn't find cooks, they couldn't find waiters, they couldn't find, the receptionists. Where'd all the people go? And people were afraid to leave their homes. And the bottom line is they realized for the first time, you know what? People really are the most important asset, aren't they? And all of a sudden, HR is now got its proverbial seat at the table because they realize the people element is so critical. And what I say is, as we opened up with Angie, the more we go down this path of technology, don't lose sight of the fact that it is an emotional connection that keeps people excited. The truth of the matter is organizations continue to get flatter. There's not a lot of room to promote people oftentimes for budget reasons or for headcount reasons. But if you have a strong relationship with your boss, you're not going anywhere. When I ask people in my UCLA class, tell me about the best boss you've ever had. And the students start to raise their hands and they say, she's someone who challenged me. She seemed to have more faith in me than I had in myself at the time. Or the next person says, it's someone who had my back. He trusted me. He made me feel self-confident. Every time I almost felt like I could do no wrong working for him. He just made me feel like I can make such a big difference. And then the third student says, someone who valued my opinion, made me feel like, what I had to say really was important. These are emotional connections, but they're also about the person's character and it's about their caring. That's what it is. As a society, we're running around always focusing on doing, doing, doing. The truth of the matter is to be someone's best boss, to be their most influential leader. It's a matter of beingness. It's not a matter of doingness. You don't have to do anything. People don't describe their bosses typically in terms of what they did. They describe their boss in terms of who they were, who they are. Who they are triggers what they do, not vice versa.
And how they
And it,
made their staff members feel.
yes, it's how you and it's Maya Angelou, the American poet, who said, "People will forget what you did. People will forget what you said. People will never forget the way you made them feel."
Mhm.
And I try and incorporate that in all of my books because it's like that's truly where the connection is. If I can't be promoted, I feel like I'm working so hard. It never ends. I'm exhausted, but I love my boss. I'm not going anywhere for 15 or 20% raises because I may risk leaving this one boss and going to work For someone who spits fire and throws chairs, I don't want to do that. I'm going to stay here where I'm comfortable. And retention is so critical. It's going to be the factor. It's going to be the growing the talent and retaining the talent. And that's where managers have to shift. They can't take people for granted anymore.
Yeah.
In the past, we had so many people, and you run the ad, and all the fish jump in the boat, and you pick whichever candidate you want. That supply line is changing. China's 40-year, the one-child policy went on for 40 years. That was way too long.
Mm.
Japan has 125 million residents. It's going to be 88 million by 2050. The average age is going to be over 65. South Korea has the lowest birth rate on the planet. Who's going to do the work? Where is the work going to, where are the workers going to come from? Part of it has to do with, international immigration. I understand that, but part of it is going to be displaced by technology. I understand that. But the truth of the matter is retention is critical
Yeah.
because you have to keep that institutional knowledge within your firm. And that comes from the heart. It doesn't come from anything else.
And that heart and the value is something, that should be seen from the top. So, Paul, very interesting conversation. Now, I have to ask you, with regards to yourself, you're an author, you're a successful consultant. Do you need to do networking? Do you network at all? Or do you have a preferred way of networking?
Do you have to network? Absolutely. Everyone has to network. Angie, you can't, in today's world, you can't just do your job with blinders on and just assume that you're always going to be safe. You need an agile mindset. You have to assume that your position will be eliminated at some point because with all the merger and acquisition activity and downsizings and layoffs, this is real for everybody. So don't get too complacent in your job and think I can stay here for the rest of my career because you'll be blindsided and shocked if that position gets eliminated. So that's number one. Number two, I was nervous to open my own consulting firm because when you're used to being on someone else's payroll, it's predictable. You've got your benefits, it's there. All of a sudden, the expression is you have to eat what you kill. I start each month with zero. And it's like, "Ugh." And I was nervous to do this. But what I realized was I was an HR person during the day. I was writing for SHRM as a columnist at night. I was writing the books for HarperCollins and the American Management Association at night. I was speaking at the SHRM conferences every year. I was very good at networking, not because I had a deliberate design. I just enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But when I'm saying this, because I like meeting other people and seeing how companies do things. But what I will say is this, even if it doesn't come naturally to you, you have to be on LinkedIn. You have to go to events. You have to build your network so that you know other people who have your job at other companies, just so you can reach out to them and pick their brains, just as friends. But it's funny because when you have those relationships over time, they build. And all of a sudden, someone says, I'm thinking of leaving my company. I'd love to find a replacement for me. And I pick up the phone and I call you, Angie. And I say, hey, Angie, would you be interested in coming over here? That's where a lot of jobs are found. It's not always going to be, oh, I have to find it on LinkedIn or I have to find it on a job board.
Yeah.
It really is a matter of personal networking, and that's going to become even more important. So your safety net is knowing people in your field, and that should be part of yourself, your career management strategy for yourself, not just to quote unquote do your job and go home at night and not think about
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah. And you never know where people end up. I just found a contact I met 20 years ago in India. I didn't realize he had such a big career now in New York City. So I just remembered the name when I was talking to somebody and I thought, oh, I should look him up on LinkedIn. He has 20,000 followers. So huge.
Wow.
He's huge.
Wow.
Yeah. And like these kind of things, people they move on, and then at some stage, you meet them again, and you can keep in touch through these media like LinkedIn. I think it's also important that you always give into the network also when you don't need it, so that when you need the network, it's there for you. Yeah, so fantastic. I'm glad we had this conversation. Do you have anything coming up, like a book launch? What are you working on right now?
No, nothing on the book side. My newest book came out about a year ago. and it's called the First Time Manager HR. So it's
Yeah.
part of the First Time Manager series. And HarperCollins asked me if I'd write the book for HR, so I did that. And that came out in May of 2024. Like I say, it was my 17th book, and I'm taking a little rest right now, Angie. Yeah, I can't. You need time to do this, so I don't have anything on the book front. But basically, what's been keeping me very busy is keynote speaking,
Yeah.
executive coaching, management training, companies that are preparing to grow, right, to scale. They use the hockey stick expression where it's going a little now, but they're expecting it to really take off. They want to make sure their management teams are aligned.
Yeah.
They want to know that their management teams understand best practices. And they want to make sure that their managers have places to ask questions and to talk with each other. And so for the companies that have been in that mode where I've been fortunate as they've been calling me in to
Mm.
spend time with their management teams. And I love it. To me, like teaching at UCLA, it's like teaching is the thing that I love to do. And even my writing is teaching.
Yeah.
So that's kind of always been my calling, and that's what I do. And we have a lot of fun with it. But they have to understand there's the expression, what got you here won't get you there. In other words, what has made you successful up to now is not necessarily going to be what's going to make you successful going forward. You have to learn new things. You have to reskill, so to speak.
Yeah.
Some people have never made the healthy jump, the shift in mindset from being an individual contributor to being a manager. They're managers and they're VPs and they're senior vice presidents, but they're still individual contributors at heart.
Yeah.
And so they micromanage their employees. And, they have to kind of get in the right mindset and understand how to make that transition. So those are the things that I kind of focus on helping people with, which for me is just a lot of fun. It's a lot of joy.
It sounds amazing, and I think you found your calling and you're exactly in the right place where you should be. So congrats, Paul, on everything you have achieved and on, having started your own consulting firm and making it out there. And I hope we will meet in person at some stage and, can share a German coffee and Kuchen or something, or whatever you enjoy more, like a
Freue mich
bratwurst
darauf.
or
I,
something
I would love it. I would
together.
love it. That would be wonderful, Angie.
Let me know if you're ever on this side of the pond so we can
I
catch up
shall
in
do
person.
so. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
the best. See you
Okay.
soon. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.